jungle. We are also indirectly his subjects, and we try to please him as far as possible. This offer of wrestling is a great favor of his, but the fact is that we are simply boys. We sometimes play in the forest of Vrindavan with our friends who are our own age. We think that to combat persons of equal age and strength is good for us, but to fight great wrestlers like you would not be good for the audience. It would contradict their religious principles. Krishna thus indicated that the celebrated strong wrestlers should not challenge Krishna and Balaram to fight. In reply to this, Chandra said, "My dear Krishna, we can understand that you are neither a child nor a young man. You are transcendental to everyone, as is your big brother, Balaram. You have already killed the elephant Kuvalyapida, who is capable of fighting and defeating other elephants. You have killed him in a wonderful way. Because of your strength, it behooves you to compete with the stronger wrestlers among us. I therefore wish to wrestle with you, and your elder brother Balaram will wrestle with Mushtika." Thus ends the Bhaktivedanta purport of the second volume, 8th chapter of Krishna, the killing of the elephant Kuvalyapida. So tomorrow we shall go to the high point of excitement in this section, the chapter entitled "The Killing of Kamsa." So stay tuned to this station. Hare Krishna, Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Bhattacharya, Stockholm mpg Shishimad Language Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Swami Thakur ki Ananta Buddha Vaishnavin ki Imam Charles Gopal ki Namacharya Bhagavad Thakur ki Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhupada Shri Advaita Gadadhar Srimati Gaur Bhakti ki Shri Sri Krishna Gopal Govindacharya Giri Govardhan ki Shri Namastudadan ki Shri Navri Maya Pradhan ki Shri Jagannath Puridan ki Shri Kornitai ki Shri Guru Prabhupada ki Swami Prabhu ki Shri Prabhupada ki Sankirtan ki Bihar Transcendental Book Distribution ki Shamaya Bhaktivinoda ki all glories to the Samad, all glories to the Samad, all glories to Shri Shri Guru Ranga, all glories to Shri Guru Namaste Saraswati Devi Gaurvani Vichari Vishesh. So we will continue with the reading of Renunciation through Wisdom by Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Sri Prabhupada, concluding the chapter called The Deluded Thinkers, from the subtitle Captivated by Maya, the Jiva has forgotten Lord Krishna. Lord Krishna expands himself into countless Vishnu forms as his Shvangsha Vaibhava. And when he manifests himself by his Divinamsha Prakash as thousands or as countless billions of jivas, all the Vishnu expansions are in the category of the Supreme Lord, but the jivas are not. They are the Lord's marginal potency. This marginal potency, comprising the eternal jivas, is a manifestation of the Lord's superior spiritual energy, or Parashakti. The conclusion of the Bhagavad Gita is that the jiva is, was, and always will be eternally a manifestation of the Lord's spiritual energy. He will never enter the category of the Supreme Lord or the Vishnu forms. This separated energy of Krishna is known as Divinamsha or Jiva, is an infinitesimal part of the Supreme Lord, much like the minute sparks of a large conflagration. Refraction can never become the whole or equal to the whole. Thus the Mayavadis claim that the fraction can become the whole is mischievous, even nefarious. This is the Vedic verdict. After overcoming his conditioned state, the fractional jiva enters the spiritual sky and participates in the Supreme Lord's transcendental, eternally blissful pastimes. The jiva permanently engages in the Lord's service in one of the many spiritual mellows and enjoys divine ecstasy. The scriptures have clearly indicated that the ecstasy of devotional service to the Supreme Lord is far superior to the bliss of impersonal liberation, Brahmananda. Indeed, the happiness of merging into the Lord's existence, Sayujya Mukti, is like a puddle of water in a cat's hoofprint compared with the ocean of bliss derived from devotional service. The devotee never prays for the jnani's Sayujya Mukti, for it is an impossible proposition. By Sayujya Mukti, the impersonalists mean relinquishing one's identity or individuality. This is nothing less than spiritual suicide. In this regard, I reproduce Dr. Radhakrishna's comment on the Bible, quote, "The doctrine of the Incarnation agitated the Christian world a great deal. Arios maintained that the Son is not the equal of the Father, but created by Him. The view that they are not distinct, but only different aspects of one being is the theory of Sabellius. The former emphasized the distinctness of the Father and Son, and the latter their oneness. The view that finally prevailed was that the Father and the Son were equal and of the same substance. They were, however, distinct persons." Introductory History essay, page 35. These words vaguely describe the philosophy of simultaneously one and different. Therefore we acknowledge it. Jesus, the Son of God, is a jiva, a separated part of the Supreme Godhead. But the jiva is also spiritual, and hence Jesus is qualitatively the same as the Supreme Lord. But the Son can never be equal to the Father in all respects. That is to say, the jiva is never on the same platform as the Supreme Lord. Also, all the jivas are separate individuals. And just as each jiva is a unique personality, so God is also a unique personality. The difference is that He is absolute. By describing the Lord as impersonal and formless, one loses sight of His perfect wholeness. We find the Brahma Samhita 539 boldly declaring the Lord's supreme personality. Ramadi Murteshu Kala Niyamina Tishna Navataram Akarod Bhuvaneshu Kintu Krishna Swayam Samabhavat Parama Pumanyo Govindamani Purusham Tamaham Vajan. I worship Govinda, the primeval Lord, who manifested himself personally as Krishna and the different avatars in the world in the forms of Rama, Nrsimha, Vamana, etc. as his subjective portions. All these incarnations of the Supreme Lord are full-fledged divinities. They are not influenced by anyone's whims. They do not become impersonal or formless upon someone saying so. They are eternally present. When they deem it necessary, they appear in their original transcendental forms, and then they disappear just as the sun rises and sets. After their appearance, they perform manifest pastimes, and after their disappearance, they continue with their unmanifest pastimes. According to the above-mentioned Brahma Samhita text, Lord Krishna is the original Supreme Personality, and all the incarnations are His partial expansions. But the Lord's incarnations are never in the category of the jivas. Srila Vyasadeva has also expounded this truth in the Srimad Bhagavatam 1.3.28. Ete chamsha kala punsha krishna stu bhagavan swayam. All the above-mentioned incarnations are either plenary portions or portions of the plenary portions of the Lord. But Lord Sri Krishna is the original personality of God. In other words, not only do the incarnations appear, but Lord Krishna, the source of all incarnation, also appears, both as himself and as an incarnation. These esoteric subjects are understood by the Lord's devotees, not by others, even though they may be erudite scholars. Therefore, when Dr. Radhakrishnan writes, the Lord Krishna is an ordinary mortal, or at best an extraordinary one, he is certainly confused. Lord Krishna is the supreme personality of Godhead, the highest, absolute truth, unsurpassable, and perfectly divine. It is impossible to think of him as impersonal and formless. He is indeed the transcendental primeval Lord, the embodiment of eternity, absolute knowledge, and bliss. In the Bhagavad Gita 10:12, Arjuna substantiates this truth about Lord Krishna's absolute supreme divinity. How is Dr. Radhakrishnan to appreciate Lord Krishna's transcendental qualities and personality, since even the demigods fail to comprehend them? The word Adideva, meaning the original primeval Lord, indicates that Lord Krishna is the origin of all the Vishnu expansions. The Purusha Shukta prayers in the Vedas glorify Karana Dakshaya Vishnu, yet Lord Krishna is the ultimate source of even this Vishnu expansion. Indeed, the Brahma Samhita expressly declares that Karana Dakshaya Vishnu is merely a partial expansion of Lord Krishna. Thus the absolute truth Dr. Radhakrishnan accepts as eternal and beginningless is, in fact, Lord Krishna, but somehow this escapes him. That Lord Krishna is the original Supreme Personality of God is accepted not only by Arjuna, but by illustrious saints and sages like Vyasadeva, Narada, Devala, and Asita. All previous spiritual preceptors, as well as present-day saints and countless Millions of ordinary people unanimously accept Lord Krishna as the Supreme Godhead. But a famous pundit like Dr. Radhakrishnan hesitates to accept him as God. Why? Srila Jamunacharya aptly explains in his Stotra Ratna, Tvam Shila Rupa Charitai Paraman Prakshitai Savena Satvikataya Pravalaishcha Shastrai Prakyata Daiva Paramartha Vidam Mataishcha Nailasura Prakritya Prabhavanti Bodhum. Oh my Lord, those influenced by demoniac principles cannot realize you. Although you are clearly the supreme by dint of your exalted activities, forms, character, and uncommon power, which are confirmed by all the revealed scriptures in the quality of goodness and in the celebrated transcendentalists in the divine nature. In Bhagavad Gita chapter 4, Lord Krishna speaks about the importance of receiving the transcendental knowledge of the Gita in the proper disciplic succession. In this way, one can avoid making the mistakes described above, which even powerful sages are prone to make. Yet there are those who still try to study the Gita on their own and draw their own concocted conclusions, rejecting the authority and conclusions of the spiritual disciplic succession. We certainly commiserate with them, but at the same time, it is hard not to laugh at them. In chapter 4 of the Bhagavad Gita, we learn that after an interval of several millions of years, Lord Krishna re-established the spiritual link with the disciplic succession right in the middle of the battlefield of Kurukshetra, explaining to Arjuna unequivocally and in detail the science of right action, knowledge, and devotional service. Bhagavad Gita is not a novel rendition of a new philosophy. Lord Sri Krishna is eternally the original personality of Godhead. Similarly, the Bhagavad Gita is eternally present as his instructions propounding the absolute undifferentiated truth. The Supreme Lord is eternal, perennially young, and so are his immortal words. They are ever fresh. Mundane scholars can always discover novel meanings in the Bhagavad Gita, and in this way they may certainly exhibit their mundane erudition. But this is all just a play of Maya. The real essence of Bhagavad Gita cannot be transmitted through such persons. The transcendental knowledge of the Gita is available only through the transparent medium of the authorized disciplic succession. The devotees and saints are solely concerned with receiving the Lord's message in the Gita as it is, while the mundane scholars fond of word jugglery look for secondary meanings. To educate those who are enamored by empirical arguments and who do so, and who do not receive transcendental knowledge through any bona fide disciplic succession, and who are thus going astray, we have compiled the essential knowledge of the Bhagavad Gita in a nutshell. So, what follows is 16 points, which we will follow as identified as the nutshell meaning of the Bhagavad Gita. So this should be very interesting. First point, Lord Sri Krishna is the supreme absolute truth, the supreme personality of God, the cause of all causes. The definition of God is given in this aphorism from the Vedas, By him and from him is manifest this universe, and he controls its creation, sustenance, and annihilation. He is the mainstay of both this unlimited, variegated cosmic manifestation and the innumerable spiritual sky, the Vaikunthas. He is the eternally existing transcendental supreme being with a spiritual form. And the impersonal Brahman is but his bodily effulgence. He is the non-dual truth. Super Soul Paramatma is his plenary expansion, who resides in everyone's heart and pervades the entire creation as well. Second point, the jivas, the living entities, are Lord Krishna's minute parts. Although the jiva is qualitatively non-different from the Lord, he is quantitatively different from him, since the Lord is infinite and jiva is infinitesimal. The jiva is situated in the Lord's marginal potency, which inconceivably is simultaneously one with and different from the Lord. Third point, the jivas, the marginal energy of the Lord, have the ability to reside eternally either in Vaikuntha or in this material world. A jiva falls down to material meshes because of countless sinful activities. And in these alien surroundings, he goes up and down, traveling through all planetary systems, from Lord Brahma's planet down to Pataloka. In the material world, the jiva experiences birth, disease, old age, and death, and is forced to accept three types of suffering, namely, those miseries stemming from his own mind and body, those inflicted by other living entities, and those hurled at him by the demigods. Fourth point. The conditioned living entities are encaged in this many-faceted prison house called the material world. The nature of this world is creation, sustenance, and destruction. During creation and sustenance, this material nature is in a manifest state, and with destruction, it again becomes unmanifest. Thus, this mundane, illusory realm is the Lord's inferior energy because it is sometimes manifest and at other times unmanifest. Fifth point. Beyond this manifest and unmanifest external energy of the Lord exists another realm which is transcendental and spiritually variegated. This is the unlimited spiritual sky known as Vaikuntha, which is everlasting. This realm is always manifest. It is never unmanifest. Thus, it is not subject to creation and annihilation. Sixth point. Those conditioned souls who identify with this illusory material nature and are proud of it and do not care to know about the Supreme Lord are subjected by the Lord's illusory potency, who is known variously as Mahakali, Chandi, and Durga, and who pierces them with her trident of the threefold miseries. These demoniac jivas are forced into slavery by the illusory potency, Kali or Mahamaya. The Bhagavad Gita, which is the essence of all the Vedic scriptures, was compiled for the deliverance of the conditioned souls. By studying the Gita carefully, a jiva takes shelter of the Supreme Lord's lotus feet and attains liberation from the merry-go-round of repeated suffering in this material world. Seventh point. The conditioned jiva suffers from the material disease, the threefold miseries of birth, death, old age, and disease. When this suffering becomes unbearable, he looks for relief. Those who are less intelligent embrace the path of impersonal liberation and undertake severe austerities to achieve their goal. More elevated than these salvationists are the devotees of the Lord, who realize that their eternal nature is to be His servants. They do not try to extinguish this nature, but rather practice and preach the eternal process of devotion so that they can enter the Lord's eternal spiritual abode. All living entities have a right to practice this eternal process of devotional service. Eighth point. The Mahatattva, the material nature, manifests itself in 24 ingredients. 1. The unmanifest principle. 2. False ego. 3. Intelligence. 4. Mind. 5. Ether. 6. Air. 7. Fire. 8. Water. 9. Earth. 10. Sound. 11. Touch. 12. Form. 13. Taste. 14. Smell. 15. Ears. 16. Skin. 17. Eyes. 18. Tongue. 19. Nose. 20. Stomach. 21. Hands. 22. Feet. 23. Anus. 24. Genitals. Ninth point. The undifferentiated absolute truth, the original Supreme Personality, Lord Sri Krishna, incarnates in this material world once in every day of Lord Brahma, that is, once every 8,640,000,000 solar years, to shower His mercy upon both His surrendered devotees and the atheistic non-devotees. He protects His devotees and slays the atheistic demons, thus giving the latter troublesome release, so to speak, in impersonal liberation. The Bhagavad Gita, on the other hand, teaches liberation through devotional service to the Supreme Lord. The only way to obtain this devotional service is to take full shelter in the spiritual authority, the Guru, who is coming in the line of a proper discipline succession. Those who toil without worshipping the spiritual master will find all their endeavors are futile. 10th point. Those foolish souls who refuse to take shelter from a bona fide Guru are truly shelterless. Without the guide of a Guru, these rascals consider themselves knowledgeable, and on the basis of this misconception, they make the mistake of worshipping God as a man and the mere mortal as God. 11th point. The Supreme Personality of Godhead is full in six opulences and is not the property of any particular sect, group, or country. He is available to everyone. He is the deliverer of all, the Supreme Father of all. He appears in this material world to liberate every living entity, and his message, the Bhagavad Gita, is therefore applicable to every land and to all people. It is meant to be preached everywhere. Therefore, those fortunate souls who are spreading the message of the Lord are most dear to him. 12. Foolish demoniac rascals in the grip of the Lord's illusory energy loudly brag about their materialistic plans. The Bhagavad Gita alone can penetrate their hard shell of ignorance and awaken them to the truth. 13th point. With concerted, strong preaching, the devotees of the Lord must inform such foolish men that their so-called plans will surely be undermined, because the platform they have chosen to build their dream houses on is factually a mirage, a movie only. Reality is elsewhere. The information needed to transport one to that realm of reality and truth is available in the magazine called Back to Godhead. 14th point. I guess that point is also repeated. Therefore, the real symptom of a true civilization is that its citizens are inspired by Back to Godhead to take up the process of devotion and go back to God, where they will eternally reside in their actual home. Only in this way can they end all futile labor. 15th point. Just as the most sinful wretch lives in a ghostly body after death and moves about in the ether, having been denied a gross body, so the impersonalist, although rising to the point of liberation in the transcendental position, falls back down to the material world because of not having developed the mood of loving service to the Supreme Lord. Therefore, the severe austerities and penances the impersonalist performs are not equivalent to the eternal religion of devotional service. And the 16th point is, when monists are so attached to the formless and personal aspect of the Lord, they distinguish between him and his transcendental body, their consciousness becomes contaminated by this blasphemy, and thus they are deprived of a place in the Lord's eternal abode. But if by some good fortune they come in touch with a pure devotee and hear from him with faith about the Lord's transcendental name, qualities, pastimes, and so on, they will certainly be cleansed of their contamination and become inspired and attracted by the Lord's glorious character, and finally they will surrender to him fully. Thus the Bhagavad Gita is such an instructive text that for those who want to enter into the eternal pastimes of the Supreme Lord, its unequivocal message teaches the first stage of surrender, and this surrender is absolutely essential for reaching the ultimate destination. It is to be understood that the pure devotees have successfully passed this test of surrender according to the tenets of the Bhagavad Gita. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. I will go to the Krishna book, chapter 9, volume 2. This chapter is called the Killing of Kamsa. After Kamsa's wrestlers expressed their determination, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, the killer of Madhu, confronted Chandra, and Lord Balaram, the son of Rohini, confronted Mushtika. Krishna and Chandra, and then Balaram and Mushtika, locked themselves hand to hand, leg to leg, and each began to press against the other with a view to come out victorious. They joined palm to palm, calf to calf, head to head, chest to chest, and began to strike each other. The fighting increased as they pushed one another from one place to another. One captured another and threw him down on the ground, and another rushed from the back to the front of another and tried to overcome him with a hold. The fighting increased step by step. There was picking up, the dragging and pushing, and then the legs and hands were locked together. All the arts of wrestling were perfectly exhibited by the parties as each tried his best to defeat his opponent. But the audience in the wrestling arena was not very satisfied because the combatants did not appear to be equally matched. They considered Krishna and Balaram to be mere boys before the wrestlers Chanura and Mushtika, who were huge men as solid as stone. Being compassionate and favoring Krishna and Balaram, many members of the audience began to talk as follows. Dear friends, there is danger here. Another said, even in front of the king, this wrestling is going on between incompatible sides. The audience had lost their sense of enjoyment. They could not encourage the fighting between the strong and the weak. Mushtika and Chanura are just like thunderbolts, as strong as great mountains. And Krishna and Balaram are two delicate boys of very tender age. The principle of justice has already left this assembly. Persons who are aware of the civilized principles of justice will not remain to watch this unfair match. Those taking part in this wrestling match are not very much enlightened. Therefore, when they speak or remain silent, they're being subjected to the reactions of sinful activities. But my dear friends, another in the assembly spoke up, just look at the face of Krishna. There are drops of perspiration on his face from chasing his enemy, and his face appears like the lotus flower with drops of water. And do you see how the face of Lord Balaram has turned especially beautiful? There is a reddish hue on his white face because he is engaged in a strong wrestling match with Mushtika. Ladies in the assembly also addressed one another, dear friends, just imagine how fortunate the land of Vrindavan is, where the Supreme Personality of Godhead himself is present, always decorated with flower garlands and engaged in tending cows along with his brother, Lord Balaram. He is always accompanied by his cowherd boyfriends, and he plays his transcendental flute. The residents of Vrindavan are fortunate to be able to constantly see the lotus feet of Krishna and Balaram, which are worshipped by great demigods like Lord Shiva and Brahma, and the goddess of fortune. You cannot estimate how many pious activities were executed by the damsels of Brajabhumi so that they were able to enjoy the Supreme Personality of Godhead and look on the unparalleled beauty of his transcendental body. The beauty of the Lord is beyond compare. No one is higher or equal to him in beauty of complexion or bodily luster. Krishna and Balaram are the reservoir of all kinds of opulence, wealth, strength, beauty, fame, knowledge, and renunciation. Krishna is a first-class yogi among all kinds of yogis. My dear friends, one lady told another, you must accept the gopis' activities to be the highest form of piety. Otherwise, how could they have achieved the opportunity of seeing Krishna both morning and evening when he goes to the pasturing ground with his cows and cowherd boy friends and returns in the evening? They frequently see him playing on his flute and smiling very brilliantly. When Lord Krishna, the Supersoul of every living being, understood that the ladies in the assembly were anxious for him, he decided not to continue wrestling, but to kill the wrestlers immediately. Parents of Krishna and Balaram, namely Nanda Maharaj, Yashoda, Vasudeva, and Devaki, were also very anxious because they did not know the unlimited strength of their children. Lord Balaram was fighting with the wrestler Mushtika the same way that Krishna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, was fighting and wrestling with Chanura. Lord Krishna appeared to be cruel to Chanura and immediately struck him thrice with his fist. The great wrestler was jolted to the astonishment of the audience. Chanura then took his last chance and attacked Krishna, just as one hawk swoops upon another. Folding his two hands, he began to strike the chest of Krishna. But Lord Krishna was not even slightly disturbed. No more than an elephant that is hit by a flower garland. Krishna quickly caught the two hands of Chanura and began to wheel him around, and simply by this centrifugal action, Chanura lost his life. Krishna then threw him to the ground. Chanura fell just like the flag of Indra, and all his nicely decorated ornaments were scattered hither and thither. Mushtika also struck Balaram, and Balaram returned the stroke with great force. Mushtika began to tremble, and blood and vomit flowed from his mouth. Distressed, he gave up his vital force and fell down just as a tree falls down in a hurricane. After the two wrestlers were killed, a wrestler named Kutta came forward. Lord Balaram immediately caught him in his left hand and killed him nonchalantly. Another wrestler of the name Shala came forward. And Krishna immediately kicked him and cracked his head. When people watch these kung fu movies, this is what they're trying to see. This particular pastimes of God. Another wrestler named Toshila came forward and was killed in the same way. Actually, I recall now from the 10th canto, these two wrestlers, Shala and Toshila, yes. In the verse in the 10th canto, it says when Krishna kicked them, he tore their bodies in half. See, right up the middle. Here it says Prabhupada just put he cracked his, so that's also there that he cracked their heads, but he cracked the whole body in half. Thus all the great wrestlers were killed by Krishna and Balaram, and the remaining wrestlers began to flee from the assembly out of fear for their lives. All the coward boyfriends of Krishna and Balaram approached them and congratulated them with great pleasure. While drums beat and they talked of the victory, the leg bells on the feet of Krishna and Balaram tinkled. All people gathered there began to clap in great ecstasy, and no one could estimate the bounds of their pleasure. The Brahmanas present began to praise Krishna and Balaram ecstatically. Only Kamsa was morose. He neither clapped nor offered benediction to Krishna. Kamsa resented the drums being beaten for Krishna's victory. He was very sorry that the wrestlers had been killed and had fled the assembly. Just imagine his mentality. He's just all alone up there, on his royal throne. The whole city population has been won over by Krishna. They're all so happy. And there he is, very bitter and angry. So we will hear what he does next. He therefore immediately ordered the drum playing to stop and began to address his friends as follows. I order that these two sons of Vasudeva be immediately driven out of Mathura. The coward boys who have come with them should be plundered and all their riches taken away. Nanda Maharaj should be immediately arrested and killed for his cunning behavior. And the rascal Vasudeva should also be killed without delay. Also my father, Ugrasena, who has always supported my enemies against my will, should be killed. When Kamsa spoke in this way, Lord Krishna became very angry with him. And within a second, he jumped over the high guards of King Kamsa. Kamsa was prepared for Krishna's attack, for he knew from the beginning that he was to be the cause of his death. He immediately unsheathed his sword and prepared to answer the challenge of Krishna with sword and shield. As Kamsa wielded his sword up and down, hither and thither, Lord Krishna, the Supreme Powerful Lord, caught hold of him with great force. The Supreme Personality of Godhead was the shelter of the complete creation, and from whose lotus navel the whole creation is manifested, immediately knocked the crown from the head of Kamsa and grabbed his long hair in his hand. He then dragged Kamsa from his seat to the wrestling dais and threw him down. Then Krishna at once straddled his chest and began to strike him over and over again. Simply from the strokes of his fist, Kamsa lost his vital force. In order to assure his parents that Kamsa was dead, Lord Krishna dragged him just as a lion drags an elephant after killing him. On sight of this, there was a great roaring sound from all sides, as some spectators expressed their jubilation and others cried in lamentation. When the day Kamsa heard that he was to be killed by the 8 sons of Devaki, he was always thinking of Krishna 24 hours a day without any stoppage, even while he was eating, while he was walking, while he was breathing, and naturally he got the blessings of liberation. In Bhagavad Gita, it is said, Sada Tat Bhava Bhavita, a person gets his next life according to the thoughts in which he is always absorbed. Kamsa was thinking of Krishna with his wheel, which means Narayana, who holds a wheel, conch shell, lotus flower, and club. According to the opinion of authorities, Kamsa attained Sarupya Mukti after death. That is to say, he attained the same form as Narayana, Vishnu. On the Vaikuntha planets, all the inhabitants have the same bodily features as Narayana. After his death, Kamsa attained liberation and was promoted to Vaikuntha Loka. From this instance, we can understand that even a person who thinks of the Supreme Personality of Godhead as an enemy gets liberation and a place in a Vaikuntha planet. So what to speak of the pure devotees who are always absorbed in favorable thoughts of Krishna? Even an enemy who is killed by Krishna gets liberation and is placed in impersonal Brahmajyoti. Since the Supreme Personality of Godhead is all good, anyone thinking of him either as an enemy or as a friend gets liberation. The liberation of the devotee and the liberation of the enemy are not the same. The enemy generally gets the liberation of Sayujya, and sometimes he gets Sarujya liberation. Kamsa had 8 brothers, headed by Kanka. All of them were younger than he, and when they learned that their elder brother had been killed, they combined together and rushed towards Krishna in great anger to kill him. Kamsa and his brothers were all Krishna's maternal uncles. They were all brothers of Krishna's mother Devaki. When Krishna killed Kamsa, he killed his maternal uncle, which is against the regulations of Vedic injunction. Although Krishna is independent of all Vedic injunction, he violates the Vedic injunction only in inevitable cases. Kamsa could not be killed by anyone but Krishna. Therefore, Krishna was obliged to kill him. As far as Kamsa's 8 brothers were concerned, Balaram took charge of killing them. Balaram's mother Rohini, although the wife of Vasudeva, was not the sister of Kamsa. Therefore, Balaram took charge of killing all of Kamsa's 8 brothers. He immediately took up an available weapon, most probably the elephant's tusk which he carried, and killed the 8 brothers one after the other, just as a lion kills a flock of deer. Krishna and Balaram thus verified the statement, the Supreme Personality of God appears to give protection to the pious and to kill the impious demons, who are always enemies of the demigods. The demigods from the higher planetary systems began to shower flowers congratulating Krishna and Balaram. Among the demigods were powerful personalities like Lord Brahma and Shiva, and all joined together in showing their jubilation over Kamsa's death. There was beating of drums and showering of flowers from the heavenly planets, and the wives of the demigods began to dance in ecstasy. The wives of Kamsa and his 8 brothers became aggrieved on account of their husbands' sudden deaths, and all of them were striking their foreheads and shedding torrents of tears. They were crying very loudly and embracing the bodies of their husbands. The wives of Kamsa and his brothers began to lament, addressing the dead bodies. Our dear husbands, you are so kind and the protectors of your dependents. Now after your death, we are also dead, along with your homes and children. We are no longer looking very auspicious. On account of your death, the auspicious functions which were to take place, such as the sacrifice of the bow, have all been spoiled. Our dear husbands, you treated persons ill who were faultless, and as a result you have been killed. This is inevitable, because a person who torments an innocent person must be punished by the laws of nature. We know that Lord Krishna is the Supreme Personality of Godhead. He is the Supreme Master of everything and the Supreme Enjoyer of everything. And therefore anyone who neglects his authority can never be happy. And ultimately, as you have, he meets death. Since Krishna was kind and affectionate to his aunts, he began to give them solace as far as was possible. The ritualistic ceremonies after death were then conducted under the personal supervision of Krishna, because he happened to be the nephew of all the dead princes. After finishing this business, Krishna and Balaram immediately released their father and mother, Vasudeva and Devaki, who had been imprisoned by Kamsa. Krishna and Balaram fell at their parents' feet and offered them prayers. Vasudeva and Devaki had suffered so much trouble because Krishna was their son. It was because of Krishna that Kamsa was always giving them trouble. Devaki and Vasudeva were fully conscious of Krishna's exalted position as the Supreme Personality of God. And therefore, although Krishna touched their feet and offered obeisances and prayers to them, they did not embrace him but simply stood up to hear the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Although Krishna was born as their son, Vasudeva and Devaki were always conscious of his position. Ascends Bhaktivedanta Purport, 2nd volume, 9th chapter, Krishna, killing of Kamsa. Srila Prabhupada ki jai.